through their progressive, soft-on-crime policies. Instead of addressing the clear epidemic of youth crime in the city, the D.C. City Council increased the age of youth offenders
for thee. He climbed the ladder of redemption, and now he's yanking it right up from the D.C. youth. See, most of us were taught to lift as you climb, but clearly
Byron Donalds just unleashed a powerful defense of law and order after Representative Jasmine Crockett tried to turn a serious debate about crime into a personal attack. Watch as Donalds dismantles her argument and exposes the hypocrisy at the heart of the left's soft-on-crime agenda. This fiery exchange over the D.C. crime bill is everything the mainstream media won't show you. Subscribe to Illuminate for more truth, more fire, and more fearless commentary that cuts through the political noise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the sponsor of the bill, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donalds.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of my bill, H.R. 4922, the D.C. Crimes Act. Now, in reference to what the gentleman was just talking about, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution is quite clear. It grants Congress the power to exercise exclusive jurisdiction over the federal district, which all Americans know now is Washington, D.C., and it is the nation's capital. That is in the Constitution that was ratified by the several states. Congress does have the constitutional authority to regulate activities within the federal district. So when it is said that somehow Congress is now eroding local control, that is simply not true. Any local powers by the D.C. City Council have been granted to the D.C. City Council by Congress. And Congress is the seat of authority when it comes to the federal enclave. It was also talked about Florida's laws. Well, let's be very clear. Florida has established itself as a beacon of law and order and making sure that our citizens are safe throughout all of our jurisdictions. So if there are some abilities for some measures of flexibility, Florida has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it knows how to keep its people safe. Very different with respect to the D.C. City Council and with respect to crime, escalated crime here in the nation's capital. Our great nation's capital has been plagued by violence, destruction, disorder for far too long, and decades of weak pro-crime leadership has turned this once great city into a dystopia. I would remind my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that some of their colleagues have been victimized by the crime here in Washington, D.C. Rather than prioritizing the safety of law-abiding and protecting the lives of innocent residents and visitors, district officials have actively facilitated dysfunction and chaos through their progressive, soft-on-crime policies. Instead of addressing the clear epidemic of youth crime in the city, the D.C. City Council increased the age of youth offenders to individuals 24 years old and younger, meaning fully grown legal adults in the District of Columbia can receive sentences meant for children. This is simply insane. And that is why I introduced the D.C. Crimes Act, which lowers the definition of youth from under the age of 25 to under the age of 18, removes the ability of judges to sentence youth offenders below mandatory minimum guidelines, and requires the D.C. Attorney General to establish a public website containing much-needed statistics on juvenile crime in D.C. The Trump administration's efforts have shown that lawlessness is a choice. And it is time for Congress to step up, adhere to our constitutional duty, and firmly address crime in the nation's capital. For the citizens of D.C., I would say, we wish your council did this the right way, but they did not, and we will act. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I sat and listened to the beginning of this debate, my heart simply broke. And many people know me for being able to do alliterations, and all I could think about was amnesia allows adolescent accountability avoidance agility from across the aisle. So work with me for a second. Imagine being a young man born to Jamaican and Panamanian parents who messed up not once but twice. Imagine standing in front of a judge with your whole future hanging in the balance, and instead of prison, you are given a promise of mercy. Your record gets wiped clean. You get a second chance at life. Now imagine taking that promise and turning it into promotion. You go to college, you get a job, and even become a member of Congress. That's what redemption looks like. That's what America is supposed to be about. And that is exactly the story of the next wannabe governor from Florida. As a young man, he went through pretrial diversion for misdemeanor marijuana possession. As an adult, yet younger than 24, he was charged with and ultimately placed on probation for felony bribery charges, which ultimately were 2 expunged. He was given a 3rd chance, and now he's the face of a bill that would not afford young people in Washington, D.C. the same opportunities afforded to him. Let me be real. If he had grown up under Donald Trump's America or under the very D.C. crime bill he's pushing today, he wouldn't be standing here as a member of Congress. He'd still be living with the weight of those charges. So let's call this what it is, opportunities for me, but not for thee. He climbed the ladder of redemption, and now he's yanking it right up from the D.C. youth. See, most of us were taught to lift as you climb, but clearly some have forgotten to lift as they climb, and now they are committed to telling the next generation to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I will not sit quiet while a man who was saved by grace turns around and tries to snatch grace away from others. If we're going to be real about crime, about communities,
Lady's time has expired.
I'd like to yield for an additional minute, please.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
About second chances and even third chances, then it needs to start with us looking in the mirror and remembering that even the author of this bill has a story too before he tries to lecture D.C. on safety. And it would be complete hypocrisy to have, hypothetically, someone convicted of 34 felonies to lecture D.C. on what to do with youthful offenders who have been scientifically shown not to have fully developed brains under the age of 25, especially if said multi-count convicted felon was in his 70s when he was convicted. What would be his excuse? Because his brain would be fully developed. And with that, I will yield back.
Welcome back to Illuminate, the channel where we shine a light on the truth the mainstream media refuses to touch. If you love this country, if you believe in law and order, and if you're tired of watching Washington play politics with your safety, make sure to hit that subscribe button and smash that like, because what we're about to break down will blow your mind. Now, let's get into this. Byron Donalds versus Jasmine Crockett. This wasn't just another heated exchange in Congress. This was a full-blown ideological showdown. And once again, Byron Donalds came ready with facts, fire, and a no-nonsense defense of American values, while Crockett came with attitude, emotional theatrics, and a talking point sheet straight from the progressive playbook. The debate was over the D.C. crime bill, legislation meant to restore accountability and end the soft-on-crime policies that have turned our capital city into a playground for criminals. Byron Donalds stood up and said exactly what millions of Americans have been screaming. Enough is enough. Crime is out of control. The streets aren't safe. And Washington, D.C., of all places, is supposed to set an example, not serve as a warning. But then comes Jasmine Crockett, loud, defensive, and ready to deflect. She tried to turn the conversation into a personal attack on Donalds, dredging up his past and accusing him of hypocrisy. Her argument? That Donalds shouldn't support tough-on-crime measures because he himself once got a second chance. Think about how twisted that logic is. Instead of discussing the issue, instead of debating policy, she tried to discredit a man who actually learned from his past, changed his path, and rose up to serve his country honorably. Byron Donalds embodies the American redemption story. He's proof that with discipline, faith, and hard work, you can turn your life around. But Democrats like Crockett? They don't want redemption. They want permanent victimhood. They want excuses. Donalds fired back, hard. He laid it out clearly. Washington, D.C. has seen skyrocketing carjackings, assaults, and murders. And the local leadership's response has been to lower penalties, release offenders early, and tie the hands of law enforcement. He said, point blank, that this bill is about protecting innocent Americans, not punishing anyone unfairly. And here's the part that got me. While Byron Donalds spoke about accountability, Jasmine Crockett rolled her eyes, muttered under her breath, and acted like restoring law and order was somehow a bad thing. That right there is the modern left in a nutshell. They'll shout about justice, but never justice for victims. They'll fight for leniency, but never responsibility. Now, let's be honest, the DC crime bill is common sense. It puts safety first. It tells the thugs running wild in our capital that their time is up. And the fact that Democrats are fighting it tells you everything you need to know.